Yeah, I'm just wondering, Mr. Nnaji, if we were, perhaps one of the reasons why, this topic is a little difficult to analyze is because of where the message has come from. Should we have a problem, really, with where the message has come from, or do you have a problem with where that message has come from?
I don't have any problem that it is coming from the government, because in any case, it's government that should make all these exhortations. But there has to be a basis. The government, like when everybody parrots that, they say, do what, think not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. The presumption we always leave behind. The presumption is that your country has given you certain basics, and you look forward to certain element of fairness, equity, okay? Then you strive within that enabling environment provided by your country to now make your own input. That is what it is about. It is not that once you are born, dropped into hell, then they say you should make a condition as inside there. It doesn't happen like that. So what we are saying is that the government must always, as has always been the case, be the one that is doing the exhortation. But the exhortation must be married with certain actions. Remember, this thing is a perception. It's just like the fact that you are somebody's father, biological father, does not confer authority over you. I mean, you are authority over him. We have seen it. Children beating their father or killing them. So you must do that's
not a normal situation.
We are in an abnormal situation too. That's why on a daily basis in the newspapers, you don't see people, very few people will exhort, the government. They say, okay, this change you are saying that it is starting with me. What about the one you promised me? I see it in the television. I see it in the newspapers. You understand what I mean? So there has to be something that you as a father is doing to show that child that you are actually my father. But and if you are not able to put certain things on the table, it is because of circumstance, not that you will never think of that.
But do you think there was ever going to be a time in any political term where the people will say, yes, we elected this person for 4 years and they delivered in those 4 years, without asking questions as, no, you still have things you said you were going to do that you didn't do?
As a lawyer, if you put your character in issue during cross-examination, we go there. I don't know that, like if you say, I couldn't have stolen this thing because I am a pastor. And lo and behold, you as a lawyer cross-examining knows that this man have been doing certain lewd things. But because of rules of evidence, you will not need to, you are not allowed to. Then you will go to town. Let us see this pastor that is the quintessence of, morality. Mr. Pastor, the other day you did this to your neighbor's this, or you did this to your member's wife. You did. Is that a good, yeah? You understand? You have put your character in issue. When the government came and said, chase away the former one, it's bad. Nigerians said, our hands were in the air, for example, looking for succor. You say you give this, you give this, you give this. If you came in, because the view of the road changes when you move from the passengers to driver's seat. You came in and saw that the things you were talking had no basis. Then you should be, courageous enough to tell people, look, this thing, I remember when Nat'l was campaigning in 1980, for the 1983 elections, I believe, there were certain things he lined out, and he backed them up with statistics. If I am saying this is free education, this is how we are going to achieve it. You understand? If the numbers are not going to fall into place when you come in, people would have seen that you did your due diligence by circumstance, and you should be able to honor. So telling people that by now people will be fat, children will be fat in school because of the quantum of eggs they will be enjoying every day. Not every pupil had the opportunity of taking one egg in 1 month. So a lot of pupils would have been whetting their appetite. I mean, they're salivating, so to speak. Okay? Some of them, in fact, may have been asking their parents, enroll me because I want to be having lunch. Then suddenly the thing fizzles like that. There's a cacophony of defense, that when you cannot indeed continue to blame the past administration justifiably. Because let me tell you, if a father loses his job on a Saturday, and it was caused by Mr. Johnson, who gave him a letter, on Sunday the children will be yapping and hailing on Mr. Johnson. By next Saturday, repeat Johnson again in that house. They say, has Johnson closed all the opportunities for you to feed us in this house?
But for you, you say it's about the timing of the message.
The timing of the
message. Not the message in itself.
Do your own part first, and you will see everything will fall into place. I can tell you, Nigerians are very good followers. That's why if we have bad leaders, they will outdo their leaders. They will outdo their leaders. But if you have good leadership, we have seen it in this country, some few instances. We are very good followers.
Is there any such thing as it's a good time to introduce this kind of campaign?
There is no better time, but there can be a good time. A good time in this particular instance will be that time when government will say, okay, we promised 1 million unemployed people 5,000 naira, but we are able to pay 300,000 of them. Look at the list, okay? We are still working very hard to make money to do that because, when Obama was taking over from Bush, everybody knew how the American economy was. Unemployment rate, in fact, it was like bleeding. On a daily basis, hundreds of thousands of jobs were being lost on a daily basis. Now, when Obama came in, he didn't mention PIM, that George Bush caused the problem, and he went to work. Until today, even yesterday, there were some numbers that were released. Even Trump was still contesting all this, and I bet the analysts believe that American economy is working. And nobody is blaming anybody because we were all here, we are adults. We knew what happened, the much we could see. Okay? If a child does not have lunch in the house, that means nobody cooked. If nobody cooked and the mother is saying that the father did not provide, it's obvious to the child, but what of you? Do you have anything for us? Even if it is biscuit. That is the issue.
But now that the campaign
So the right time will be when the government has done its own due diligence.
When will that
It is not so much about the president, but the president is the leader. He should be able to look at the people he brought in to deliver. They are not delivering.
If you put a time to that time.
The time I want to put at it, at my own level, is that the government should work harder to ensure that the economy is improved upon. And some of these snippets of promises, like food on the table, whatever, start something. Don't wait until 4 years comes and goes and you come back again with promises. You see, the problem with promises unfulfilled
Mr. Nnaji, I'm just wondering.
Yes.
You've talked about government, doing some of these things, but what we've seen over the years, it's not that government has not even tried to do certain things. So, for instance, we had subsidy introduced by government, and over the years, we saw how that process was bastardized. We've seen all sorts of, goodwill that even government has introduced. Let's take, for instance, even the IDP camps where food is provided, and we hear that, people who are supposed to feed those in the IDP camps are taking home the food that, people who have been displaced should be eating. You have to ask, what has become of certain people's character? Shouldn't we be asking those kinds of questions as to what exactly is really happening to Nigerians? Is it really the hunger that's pushing us to such extremes?
Very well. This government is based on the mantra of discipline and anti-corruption. So you do not need exhortation. You need action. You don't even need to tell. The basic thing is if you go to the motor park and say, nobody should drink ogogoro, please, don't drink ogogoro, it will not happen. Because some people will be drinking it under your nose. And then be talking to you. When you look out the other way, they will take a sip. But if you have some element of enforcement based on certain scientific criteria, because these things is not a haphazard issue, you must find an intelligent team to hammer out processes that are sustainable. Like if you talked about subsidy by previous government, nobody they didn't promise that they were going to give subsidy. So it just came up as one of their programs. So it was wishy-washy, and some of them, we know in this country how some programs are. Those who design it do it until the thing comes back to them. Like the government now says discipline starts with them, the change. The whole thing starts and ends with them in government. So because the government sold to Nigerians, and Nigerians bought it, and it is a desirable project, that we should all be disciplined and we should fight corruption. But like I said here, that even the corruption is not being fought scientifically. It has haphazard. And the risk there is that even when this government is no longer there, we will relapse. We will relapse. And it will even come more ferocious. And that is the risk. But if you have a scientific basis of fighting corruption, even though I don't believe you fight corruption, you denude it. But for the sake of lack of any other commonplace something, you fight corruption. Because if you fight fire, you remove oxygen. You cannot fight fire frontally. The scientific basis of fighting fire is that you remove the oxygen, or you put something denser than the air.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back afterwards. Join us again.